on, hit that. Record.
All right, so we're going to call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order on February 21st, 2018. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman O'Brien.
Present.
I am present. Alderman Laws. Here. Alderman Clee. Alderman Karen. Here. Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Present.
And we also have Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, and various city personnel. First item is public comment. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to the committee on any subject? Doesn't seem like it, so we will go to communications. And just before we go further, let's let the record show that Alderwoman Clee has arrived and is present. Communications.
All right. From Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of NPD ammunition of value of $66,395. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the purchase to Eagle Point Gun / TJ Morris and Son in the amount of $66,395. Funds are available in Department 150 ammunition and supply account.
Thank you. Now, we have various members of the police department here. I don't know if you want to come up. We've got, there might be questions. We've got a bunch of police items at the beginning of the agenda. Thank you very much. Maybe you should be nice if you could introduce yourselves.
Karen Smith, Business Manager, National Police.
Adam Anderson, Firearms Training Unit.
And this is, of course, the a contract for the purchase of ammunition, which kind of speaks for itself. But do any of the members of the committee have any questions for the PD? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
The next communication is from Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of NPD firearms in the value of $52,730. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the purchase to the Atlantic Tactical in the amount of $52,730. Source of funding is the Department 150, Police, Firearms, Escrow.
Okay. Any questions for the PD? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next communication is from Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, for the purchase of NPD Forensic Workstation at a value of $13,995. I move to accept, place on file, and award the purchase to Sumery in the amount of $13,995. Funds are available in Department 150, Police, Equitable Sharing Forfeit Account.
Any questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
Actually, Mayor,
Yes,
I have a retroactive question.
that's fine.
So I was reading the purchase order. You guys are switching over to the SIG P320, right? Now, SIG's in New Hampshire, but we're ordering it from a company outside of New Hampshire. Is there a reason for that? Does SIG not distribute directly to police departments, or are we getting a better deal from the other distributor?
Yes,
Atlantic Tactical is the only company authorized to operate in the Northeast per 6 hour, so it's a sole source.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
we allow retroactive questions, so.
Thank you.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Mayor.
Retroactive. too.
Yes,
I think somewhere I read that normally the guns last, 5 to 7 years, but I think this was 4 years. So,
The guns are actually coming up within, they're very close to due to the 5 years. Smith & Wesson, the current guns that we have, are required to have all of the internals replaced, which is extremely labor intensive and expensive. These guns are starting to reach the end of their lifespan. They will require labor and purchasing of many new parts.
Thank you.
And what's the lead time on the purchase? You put the order in, and how soon do you get the firearms?
I spoke to Jim Berry yesterday, actually, asking this. He said we would receive the, by August if we put it in within the next couple of weeks.
Any other questions? Now, did we vote on the third item? I think we did, right? Yes. Those were retroactive questions. All right, so the next,
We're on the top of page 2. Yes.
Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of NPD tasers, value $14,759. I move to accept, place on file, and award the purchase to Taser International, Inc. in the amount of $14,759. Source of funding is Department 150, Police General Fund Firearms Account.
And can you give us a brief explanation on this one?
So we currently have 35 tasers issued to officers. Taser has sent out a memo that the typical lifespan expected from a taser, it being an electronic device, is approximately about 5 years. We currently have 23 tasers that are 5 years and older, and 9 tasers that are 7 years and older. These tasers are just to replace some of those older tasers that we would like to take off the street that are less than reliable.
Okay. Any questions? Alderman Laws.
What do you do with the old tasers?
They actually have no resale value. They just get destroyed.
They get destroyed?
Yeah, Taser doesn't want them
Give
back.
them out as Christmas presents to aldermen? Is that... Curious, that was a joke. For the record, that was a joke.
I was thinking of a follow-on, but I won't do it. All right, so these do not go to the alderman. That's clear, right?
No.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passes. Now, I think that's your last item, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
The next item is from Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding Lawson Consulting Services, value of $10,000. I move to accept, place on file, and approve the purchase from Surety Systems in the amount of $10,000. Funds are available in Department 111, Human Resources General Fund.
And who is here to, the purchasing manager, excuse me, the personnel manager is here? If you have not met, this is Mr. Larry Budrow, who's the personnel manager for the city.
Good evening.
Could you give the committee a brief explanation on the proposed purchase?
Yes, certainly. Lawson is the name of the software that the city uses for its financial, human resources, and payroll work. And the payroll work is very complicated for the city. We're administering 17 union contracts and 3 non-union agreements. And those continually have changes as contracts are amended. We don't have the in-house expertise to always configure those changes or to debug problems. Last fiscal year, the Payroll and Human Resources Department, for one reason or another, turned over 100%. We spent $156,000 with this company. Surety Systems is essentially a very specialized temporary staffing agency, and they have Lawson expertise, consultants with Lawson expertise, with whom we contract to work with mostly over the telephone. They sign onto our systems. We've spent $7,500 so far this fiscal year. We're seeking to increase that purchase order by $10,000 so that we have the elbow room as we go through the balance of this fiscal year to seek help when we need it.
Questions or comments? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question would be, this also includes training with Lawson for these particular upgrades with people, or is the training going to be done in-house, train-to-trainer type of situations?
So the training kind of comes along with the, every time we get a consult, we learn so much. So we spent $150 last year. We budgeted $30 this year. many of the things that are repetitive, we can now do ourselves.
Okay.
Anyone else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Budrow. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding the engineering study for East Hollis Street, Bridge Street improvements. The value is $256,503.
And we have James Veo here to explain this item.
James Veo, Downtown Specialist in the Economic Development Division. Basically, what you have before you is a contract for design services from McFarland Johnson for studying various alternatives and selecting a preferred alternative for improvements to the intersection of Bridge Street and East Hollis Street, adjacent to the pair of bridges known as Taylor Falls Bridge that go into Hudson, just adjacent to the former skate park area. The total budget in federal dollars that's been allocated to this project is $3.6 million and some change. This is 100% match funds from DOT, state and federal funds, and so none of this money is money that is procured on a municipal or a city level. What will happen is over the next several months, McFarland Johnson will engage in a design process followed by community input session that will result in a final design that will be put forth to DOT for approval to move on to the next phase. I won't get into all the acronyms, but essentially will result in a construction project 18 to 24 months down the road.
Any questions? Alderman O'Brien.
Yes, to Mr. Vale, thank you for taking the question. This will also cover the new development that's down there on Bridge Street and looking at that particular influx of traffic into that East Hollis Street bridge there, correct?
Can you clarify which construction? Are you talking about the Bancroft Street?
Right.
Yeah, so part of how this project came to bear, this traffic improvement project, was the result of coordination between the developer for that new construction that you see over there in the city of Nashua to develop a comprehensive improvement that would create new and improved access to that development. It was not the genesis of this project, but it was part of the discussion of why this came to bear. Additionally, something we'll be looking at during the design process is future connections to Crown Street and the park and ride facility that was newly connected. The work that will be completed here will not include in its scope a connection to Crown Street, but it will include observation and some documentation of design work that would allow a connection to happen in the future.
Okay, yeah.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I have to find my place here. Okay. From Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding Amendment Number 2 to Post-Construction Engineering Services Contract with Hayner Swanson, a value of $77,630. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and authorize change order number 2 to the contract with Hayner Swanson in the amount of $77,630. Source of funding is Department 160, Administration/Engineering, Broad Street Parkway Bond.
Now, is there anyone here on this, or no one in particular, right? Hayner Swanson is doing, there's still follow-up work to be done on the Broad Street Parkway. There are the completion of various, punch list items, small things. plus the wrapping up of the federal funds and the final approvals that are necessary. They need to work on, particularly the repurposing of $4 million that resulted from the change in the route, which was adopted in 2010. When what happened was the city and the federal DOT, state DOT agreed to change the route in 2010, and previous to that, some property had been acquired, NIMCO and some other buildings in the mill yard. Then when the route was changed, those properties, although already acquired, were no longer necessary. And a couple of years ago, the federal highway ruled that because the properties had not been used, even though they had been approved even though the acquisition had been approved by federal DOT, they ruled that those were not eligible expenses for federal reimbursement. Because the city had already expended so much money of its own on the project, if the disallowance of those expenses, which is somewhere between $4 and $5 million, meant that the city would not have been able to fully spend the earmark which had been designated for this project back quite some time ago, 10, 15 or more years ago, leaving so-called, $4 or $5 million on the table, so to speak. So we went to the congressional delegation and got some help there. Senators Shaheen, Hassan, and Congresswoman Custer, and worked with federal DOT and state DOT, and they agreed to repurpose the funds to approve a repurposing of the funds towards paving of major roads in the city. Now, this is in addition to this $37 million paving project you've heard of. So this money is being repurposed to pave Kinsley Street, part of Amherst Street, Somerset Parkway, and some other significant roads. And the red tape required in getting this repurposing approved is quite extensive. Still not totally, everybody says it's, about to come, et cetera, but it is still not totally okayed. We expect to get that this spring. But in any event, Hayner Swanson is more involved in this whole repurposing issue than anyone else. They have the rather strong and lengthy relationships with all of these parties, federal DOT, state DOT, and understand the regulations that are necessary to accomplish this. So this is basically follow-on work from the Broad Street Parkway, making sure that we are able to fully take advantage of the federal funds that were originally assigned to the project. Any questions? Thoughts? And so this is bonded money. This still is this is money that was left over, or is still left over from the bonds that the city sold pursuant to this project. All right. If there are no questions, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding change order number 1 to construction services contract with Simons for LED street lighting, value of $42,000. I move to accept, place on file, and authorize change order number 1 to the contract with Simons in the amount of $42,000. Funds are available in Department 161 Streets LED lighting bond.
Any questions or discussion on this item? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. Just the one. Mr. Coogan, I know you're not probably an electrical engineer, but not to be too tough, but I am amazed that we only had 11 fixtures that seem to have some damage with the type of winters that we're having, and that seems like an extremely low number compared to the 5,500 that streetlights that we have out there. So we're doing very good with the LEDs evidently.
Yeah, they're very durable. They have not had much damage at all. And then some of this is to buy some fixtures that were for specific neighborhoods
Mhm.
that had not been done.
Very good.
Actually, that answered my question.
Okay.
Okay.
What is that?
Anything else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding 2018 street paving program, pavement cores value not to exceed $30,000. I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to SW Cole Engineering in the amount not to exceed $30,000. Source of funding is Department 161 Streets, General Operating Fund, Paving, and Trust Account 54, Property Services.
Any discussion? Questions? Alderwoman Karen.
Oh, thank you. Can you tell me when this is supposed to begin? In the spring, or did they give you a start date?
I believe it's in the spring.
I think it's as soon as the weather,
Yeah,
Okay,
as soon as, the point of this contract is
to get
to
it started?
assess the streets that are going to be paved.
Thank you.
And so it will start as soon as the weather is good enough to begin the work.
Thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Alderwoman Clee.
Yes, I just have a quick question. I don't know if you can answer this. When I spoke to them about the paving project and the list and so on, they said that they were still working on getting us the list. This is above and beyond, or is this just the testing, do the core testing and all that?
a specific quality control issue that they go out on certain streets,
Right.
take a course so they know they're getting the material they're supposed to get, the thickness they're supposed to get laid down. So I'm not sure that they specifically know where they're going to do those cores just yet.
Okay, so this, I guess you wouldn't know the answer to this, whether or not this defers us getting the paving list, what they're going to do this year. I thought they said they were going to have that at the beginning of March, so
I don't think this will affect the timing.
it
of
won't
the
affect the
paving,
timing. Okay, thank you.
Which is, I think, close to issuance, but not yet issued.
Right, the last I'd heard, they were waiting something to get from the utility companies, finding out what their jobs were so that we didn't do over theirs. Thank you.
But Concord Street will be on the list.
Yes,
Okay, just in case,
you knew that was on my
just
list.
in case you were gonna ask that question. If you were gonna
Thank
ask the pothole question,
I'm gonna
Yes.
ask a pothole question.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I actually wanted to know, based on this, will they be shifting some of the priorities and all the lovely weather that has created so many potholes?
I think this, as Mr. Kuchen said, has to do with evaluating some of the work that's been done and also looking at some of the streets. So I don't think this will affect the street list
Okay.
particularly.
Great.
Any other questions? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding Temple Street guardrail value not to exceed $120,000. I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to William P. Davis Excavation LLC in an amount not to exceed $120,000. Funds are available in Department 160 Engineering Highway Block Grant.
Any discussion, questions? Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
Where is this on Temple Street?
So,
Just
if
curious.
you proceed east on Temple, and you go by the senior center, you keep going, you kind
get
of
to
come
that
to that
plat.
end, and you take that left, and you keep going. As you sort of pass St. Stanislaus,
On the right.
and you're sort of in that area on your left as you're going out. So on the north side of the street, there is a fence that's right along the railroad property. So there are no buildings. You look across to BAE and the mills over on the other side of the river. So there's been some safety problems here because the grade is very steep going down. I think a car, didn't a car?
A car did.
Yes,
Yes, went
A
in.
car went off here and
Yep.
someone died a few years ago, right?
Right.
So the guardrail is in quite bad shape, and the idea here is to replace the guardrail and repair the fence so that there are no other safety issues.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could
Alderman
just,
O'Brien, you
thank
might
you,
have
Mr. Mayor.
responded to this.
yeah, unfortunately, I did have that particular call when the person was found, but the situation there is a very large drop, and I think it's been somebody else with a wheelchair, if I remember right, several years earlier than the car incident, something has happened. I think my commend to our city, the city engineers, recognizing that that is a large drop, and this will enhance the safety, I think, so it's definitely needed. I think it's to eliminate something like that happening in the future.
Alderwoman Karen.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. For the record, Mayor, it's St. Casimir's Church.
St. Kaz, yes, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
That's okay, just trying
My
to.
wife's grandmother belonged there, so I should
Yeah, a
know
long
that.
time ago. I have a question. Does that property belong to the railroad company? Or is that city property?
Well, this is in the city right of way.
Okay, because we always have this conflict with the railroad company stepping up to the plate, and
Right.
I know that's been in disarray, and we've talked about that before, so I'm glad to see that
Yeah.
we're getting it done at a big cost, but safety comes first.
It is these are state funds coming from the state highway grant.
Oh, it is,
Because anything having to do with street maintenance or travel is eligible for the state highway grant, so this is part of that. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of a portable air compressor of value of $22,943. I move to accept, place on file, and authorize the purchase from ATS Equipment in the amount of $22,943. Source of funding is Department 177, Parks and Rec Trust Fund.
Thank you, and I think we have Mr. Caggiano here.
Excellent, because I was going to ask.
I don't know who's met Mr. Caggiano before, but this is Nick Caggiano, Head of Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we have a 1985 compressor that we've had for a really long time, but it's finally met its demise and needs to be replaced. It's kind of an important piece of equipment because other than our office, all of our facilities are three-season facilities. So we need this compressor to get things started up in the spring, get all the irrigation systems, the pool started. And then in the winter, we need to blow everything out before winter, including Holman Stadium, Stello Stadium, the concession stands at Mine Falls, the three pools. So it's kind of a vital piece of equipment that we use throughout the year.
Any questions? Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you. Just basically, I'll combine them, two questions, but I imagine we're talking about a tag-along, like Ingersoll ran, something of that quality type of compressor. And number two, will have all the, besides blowing out, but be able to do some digging and breaking up with jackhammers in case or
It
something
will.
like that.
That's the good thing about this is our compressors for the division are kind of getting older. So by having one at Park Rec, and we chose one that's compatible with the other ones, that was one of the criteria. Why keep parts for two different pieces of equipment? So during the summer, the street department will be able to utilize it to run jackhammers or cut saws and things like that if they find that they have an extra job to do or one of their units is in for maintenance or repair.
Excellent.
Alderwoman Kelly.
How many do you currently have in service?
This is the only one, and
Okay.
it's not in service now. We have
Okay.
one for the department.
So you'll be replacing, not adding?
Correct.
Got it.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding Mine Falls Gatehouse roof repairs with a value of $13,300. I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Forcier Contracting in the amount of $13,300. Funds are available in Department 11177, Parks and Rec Trust Fund.
Any discussion? Do you want to explain this one?
Sure. The gatehouse, for any of you who don't know where it is, it's at the entrance to Mine Falls, at the Stello Stadium entrance. In 2008, we did a very large renovation to it. It's inside, it's almost museum quality. Everything was redone. And it's open on every Mine Falls Trail Day on Saturdays. When the weather's warm, it'll be open during the morning, and you could come in, and there's usually someone from the Mine Falls Advisory Committee that gives you a tour and explains how the gatehouse used to work. This winter, we experienced some rotting boards in the soffit, and once we got up and started getting inspected by the contractors, they really said, you need to get the roof replaced. It's a rolled rubber roof, a membrane. Rather than just patch it, we want to do it right, protect the investment that we made in 2008 and get it watertight.
Any questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding a portable toilet contract with a value of $16,565. I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to United Site Services in the amount of $16,565. Source of funding is Department 177, Parks and Rec, General Operating and Trust Funds, and Department 169, Wastewater.
So, Mr. Mayor, we have a portable restroom contract that we put out every year. We put out 26 units throughout the city at various fields, various other locations. They're cleaned 3 times a week. There's also a little insurance policy with them, so if they're vandalized or replaced, we don't have to pay for them to be replaced if they have a problem. The other part of this contract that's is really good is we are able to allow other nonprofits associated with the city to piggyback on our rates. So for like the downtown stroll items, events like that, any city-related entity can use the contract, and they'll honor those rates for those organizations.
Alderman O'Brien.
Yes, this seems to be standard for summertime use, and that's good. Now, next on the agenda, I see the fireworks are coming up, and do we get more extra toilets because of the large crowds at that particular time?
We don't, because we have the stadium has enough facilities to handle it. We do bring some in for our field events, like when we have the Brew Fest. We'll bring in a whole gang of toilets there. And I believe last year, for the first time, we had a food truck festival in September that we're working on rescheduling right now, and they brought in their own units as well. We do keep one in the winter at Roby Park for the skating rink there. We have an accessible one there for that park, just during the wintertime. But everything usually comes in November and hopefully gets put back out soon if this weather stays with us.
Alderwoman Clee.
I have just a quick question for you. You said that the insurance, the contract was, if something went wrong with them, including vandalism, because I know at Mine Falls, there were those firecrackers or whatever was put into
They
those.
tip them over occasionally. they'll be lit on fire.
Yeah,
And they
I
kind of
think that's what
burn
happened at the soccer field.
straight
Yeah.
down.
And then you have to go.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Very
they're
unpleasant.
completely
Yes.
covered. It's very small money. I don't know the exact amount, but it's makes sense to
Yes,
get
I
the
agree.
insurance on.
I agree. Thank you.
Alderwoman Harriet Gathright.
And I'm not sure if you can answer this, but since you were talking about throughout the city, was there one in the garage next to City Hall at one point?
There was one for years that they used our contract for that was paid out of parking. They chose the middle of last year to remove that
Okay.
due to bad behavior going on in the parking garage. And I think that problem went away.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kuchen, Purchasing Manager, regarding 2018 4th of July fireworks display with a value of $16,500. I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Atlas Pyrovision Entertainment Group in the amount of $16,500. Funds are available in Department 177, Parks and Rec, General Operating Fund.
So this is our annual 4th of July show that we produce at Holman Stadium. We went out for a 4-year contract. This will be year 3. They're discounted down. We get by going to a 4-year deal. Next year will be okay, and then we'll have to go out to bid. We've really tried to stay consistent. I think and you could correct me, in 30 years, this is only the 3rd vendor we've ever used. They're really good people. They have a local store on Amherst Street. And if any of you have gone to the shows, they're not bragging, but they're spectacular. They're really, really good fireworks display.
Any comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Wait,
Whoop.
yep.
Alderwoman Karen.
So, back when I was running 4th of July, I used to count the fireworks. So, Mr. Caggiano, how are we doing? Do we get
I
the
count-
exact number? Or
Count them every year. I have the
You have your
original
clicker.
clicker that you gave me
Really?
17 years ago.
I have
And,
to say,
I
40-some odd years of fireworks, and as Nick said, we've only had 3 companies. They have been super to the city, really worked well with us, even with the issues we've had over the years. And you learn a lot about fireworks when you work for Park and Rec. You don't have to be a policeman or a fireman to know what's going on, and I commend our city for doing this and putting this on for this amount of time. And I think your staff deserves some good vibes on that. So I appreciate it, even though I haven't seen a fireworks in 10 years.
It's a long day, but it's just not the Park and Rec staff. I mean,
No.
they work hard. I work there all day, but we also have to coordinate with the fire marshal's office, police. I think just about
Yep.
every officer is on that day. There's they have bomb dogs that go around and check, make sure after the show that the shells, there's no unexploded shells in the field. So it's quite a production. It really is.
Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to echo Alderman Karen's remarks. It is a lot of work with the fire marshals, the police, and coordination, and just in case, he's involved too with the emergency operations and everything. But it's very important because we're doing something for the people, and they really seem to enjoy it. It's a summertime event. Other events are going on during the day. It's a good family fun day. It also hits the safety margin. My little thing, we put on a good show so that the average citizen doesn't have to put on the show or should not put on their own show. Come to the professional show, enjoy it. It's safe. It's a lot more fun, and share the fun with the other citizens. I think we're giving our citizens the best bang for the buck right here with this, so it's pretty good. So, very good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman.
Alderwoman Clee.
not so much I have a question, but I want to kind of piggyback on what Alderman O'Brien had said. You're right, it does. I'm glad that we do this for the city. I think it's incredible. It does not stop the citizens. And I can tell you from being in my neighborhood and getting phone calls as a state rep, make this stop, and I can't do anything about it. It does not stop the citizens, but I do think it is a worthwhile event. We have to find some other way to curtail the rest of it. But yeah, no, you guys do a great job.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly.
I just wanted to express my gratitude. I've been living here since after college, and we've watched the fireworks from Clock Tower, and now we bring my daughter, and it's always an incredible event. So I know there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, so thank you.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Nick. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of 6 solid waste collection vehicles with a value of $1,555. Did I say that correctly? I had to think about that. I move to accept, place on file, and contingent upon Board of Alderman approval, award the contract to McNeilius Truck and Manufacturing in the amount of $2,001,555. Source of funding is Department 168 Solid Waste, SURF.
Now, the bonding for this has been approved, but any contract of $1 million or more or a multi-year contract needs to be approved by the entire Board of Aldermen. So in this case, it would be a recommendation, and you will see it on the agenda at the next meeting. Any discussion? These are C and G, by the way.
That was going to be my question.
Any discussion? Questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding the placement of traffic control equipment on Daniel Webster Highway and Spitbrook Road for the value of $146,500. I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Ocean State Signal Company in the amount of $146,500. Funds are available in the Department 160 Engineering Highway Block Grant.
There's no one else here to discuss this. Wayne Husband is the traffic engineer. The source of funds is, again, the state highway grant. And this will replace the controllers, a number of controllers down in the Daniel Webster Highway area with more advanced, sophisticated controllers, and will provide some training for our traffic engineers regarding how to use them and time them, and also some consulting work regarding the timing of the lights. The controllers, of course, control the lights and their timing. Any questions, comments? Alderwoman Clee.
Do we know, do these controllers, they just, the traffic pattern lights, or would it also be for the emergency, when the emergency vehicles are coming through and can do that? Is it all of that whole controller, or?
I think that the Opticon, I believe that the so-called Opticon system is controlled by the controllers, but those are activated by fire trucks and the
Right.
like. I don't know. They must be controlled by the controllers as well. Right?
That you would be correct in saying so, yes. And it also goes into a timing mechanism, and it'll go back to the reset. And today, they're a lot different. The technology is getting, so upgrading this is going to enhance the traffic flow.
Good.
And probably could be adjusted. I'm not a traffic engineer, but take into account holiday shopping,
Right.
in a very heavy traveled area. So I think the people probably won't really notice it, but they'll see the efficiency
Right.
possibly with this,
Thank you.
Alderman Laws.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not sure if anybody here would have the answer to this question, but are they remotely operated? Would you know, Alderman O'Brien? Like, is there like a central hub where they can control the traffic patterns, or do you have to go to each individual controller and do it manually?
I think as a result of a previous grant, these things were connected via a fiber optic cable.
Okay.
So these can be remotely adjusted.
Just curious, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of raw sewage updated drive with a value of $33,000. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and award the purchase to Granite City Electric Supply Company in the amount of $33,000. Source of funding is Department 169 wastewater.
Now we have Mr. Boucher, who's the wastewater superintendent here. He's going to come up and help explain all of the wastewater purchases. So we're on the first one, which is the raw sewage updated drive.
So my understanding is that this was originally approved back in December. They chose the low bidder. First of all, this is variable frequency drives for our raw sewage pumps. They're the 4 main pumps that carry water through the wastewater plant. One drive was replaced in 2016. This is to replace the other 3. The first time we went to go put this out to bid, we chose the low bidder. Then it was found out that the drives that they had submitted were obsolete. So this is going back and looking at the second low bidder at $33,000 to replace these drives. So.
Any discussion? Alderman Laws.
Just, thank you, Mayor. What do the drives do?
They allow the pumps to speed up and slow down rather than when called to come on, they just fire up at 100%. You can alternate the speed on the pumps.
Alderwoman Clee.
The one that they replaced in December, was that also out of date?
No, it wasn't. That was the correct one. However, this company somehow submitted ones that were obsolete. So these will match the one that's in place now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Boucher just joined recently, so you were not here. Were you here in December?
No, January 3rd I started.
Yeah, right. So he's coming. He's,
That new.
He's coming into this a little late. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding contract for steam system repairs, value not to exceed $20,000. I move to accept, place on file, and award the contract to Armand Lemure Company, Inc. in the amount of $20,000. Funds are available in Department 169 wastewater.
This is for a secondary system. In 2015, there was a boiler installed to replace an older one at the facility, which provides hot water, steam through pipes. And the new HVAC system that's being installed now gets connected to the old pipe system with the 2015 boiler. This is to replace a lot of the steam valves between the new boiler and the new HVAC system, so that they're all new. And we found out recently that the HVAC company, the company that's working on the new HVAC system, can't test the new equipment until some of these repairs are done. The steam traps aren't holding, so steam is coming out where it's not supposed to come out. So this is to go through and replace all the steam traps and some old valves that are in place, so that from this point on, they can be maintained. And Lemire is not the contractor on the other projects. This is the company that's been servicing our new boiler that we had in. So they will continue to upgrade the system that's tied to, it's in between the new HVAC system and the new boiler.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding the purchase of raw sewage pump suction cover assembly. The value is $15,800. I move to accept, place on file, and authorize the purchase from Exlem Water Solutions USA in the amount of $15,800. Source of funding is Department 169 wastewater.
So this is the base of one of the 4 raw sewage pumps that we have. Typically, they don't get replaced. However, this one received some damage to the base. Between the pump and the base, there's a wear ring. Over time, this wear ring wore faster than we had expected, and it caused the pump itself to wear into the base. So it's beyond repair, and it has to have a new one put in place. Once this one is out, we'll inspect all the other bases. But this is to replace that whole base, so we can put a brand-new wear ring in it.
Questions? Alderman Laws.
Do you know why it wore down?
Probably because it wasn't disassembled sooner. It's a big task to disassemble them, but they have to be disassembled in order to see the wear ring. These type of things normally get put onto a maintenance schedule, and so you assume how many years the wear ring will last. I wasn't here, so I don't know when the last time it was disassembled to look at the wear ring.
Can we safely assume that under your purview, this isn't gonna happen again?
It won't, because there is the foremen are putting together a program I know we have Cartograph here in town, which all this equipment will go into. We'll have work orders that come up that tell us when it needs to be disassembled. There's a lot of pumps and they have to go into this program, but that's the goal, is to have everything on a maintenance program, so nothing like this gets missed in the future.
Thank you very much.
Alderwoman Kelly.
You said that there are other wear rings, and you're going to expect them after this one's replaced. Is that the case?
Yes, that's correct. You can't take them all offline. They have to be in place, but we can safely take one offline, pull it out, and some of these pedestals can be repaired. They can be remachined. We do have an older one sitting there that we're going to send out for inspection to see if we can use that as a spare. But once this one's back in place, then we'll take another one apart. But we always have to have 3 in case we have wet weather events, high storms. More than one pump runs at one time, so we have to make sure that we don't have too many down at once.
Understandable. Are you assuming that they're all around the same age?
I'm not sure.
I know you're new.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
There is a long history here. Briefly, I think, to summarize, Alderwoman Karen was around too, so she can correct me where I'm wrong. Probably around 2014, it was discovered that a previous superintendent had not been really properly managing the whole plant, which is now about 30 years old, so there's a lot of older equipment in there. And at least the original, the secondary treatment went in about 30 years ago. Yeah. And when that was discovered, Alderman Dean, former Alderman Dean, Alderman Siegel, former Alderman Siegel, and Lisa Foto, Director of Public Works, began to focus on this plant very extensively. We had an audit review by DES. I think we brought in engineering firms, and they made a lot of recommendations regarding upgrades, equipment replacement, different procedures. And as a result, the operation of the plant has been improved considerably. There were some problems with the chemistry in the plant as well. And so over a period of years now, I would say that many, many pieces of equipment have been, there's just beyond belief the number of, the amount of stuff that's out there. From multi-million-dollar items to $20,000 items, there's been a lot of replacement at the sewage treatment plant. This is kind of, in a way, cleanup work. This is $20,000, a lot of money, but compared to the other money that we've spent at the plant, it's minor. And I think now we still have a little work to do, but the system and the plant has been upgraded in a major way over the last 4 or 5 years, I would say.
Yes.
You've probably looked back and seen some of those reports and the like. Alderwoman Karen.
Yeah, thank you. I agree, Mayor. It was kind of shocking when we found all these things, these deficits that were here, because this plant is 24/7, and if anything happened, it would be catastrophic for everyone, and especially the people who live in my ward at that area. So I'm glad to see that we're putting together a format so that maintenance can be looked at a little bit more often, so that we're not coming in with $2 million price tags. I mean, this is a lot of money. There's almost $150,000 just for this, but I'd rather see it done now than have some emergency happen and we're really in a pickle. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And I think you're right, Mayor. We're heading in the right direction for the sewer plant.
So Mr. Boucher came from Merrimack, or from Milford,
yeah.
where you operated the plant there for a number of years, and so now we have the benefit of his experience. Any other discussion on this item? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Coogan, Purchasing Manager, regarding SCADA Upgrades Project Construction Change Order Number 1, value of $114,000. I move to accept, place on file, and approve change order number 1 to the contract with electrical installations in the amount of $144,000. Funds are available in Department 169, wastewater, WRF, SCADA.
Could you explain this one?
Yep. The SCADA system is a program that allows the operators to control all the functions of the facility, all the equipment, and allows us to see things and control them from a centralized location. Over time, this system needs to be upgraded, the software needs to be upgraded, the PLCs need to be upgraded. Electrical Installations was awarded the contract, and the original engineer on this project was Woodard and Curran, and as part of that, which they are no longer, but they were going to do part of this startup. They are also a company that does the computer software programming, so they were going to take over a portion of this work. But now that we're not using them as the engineers on this project anymore, we're going to use Weston and Sampson. We're asking that EII do the part that Woodard and Curran was originally going to do, and they're doing it for a lower cost. The original cost that Woodard and Curran was going to do it for was $173,000, so we're going into this at $114,000. The benefit of having Electrical Installations do the work, and this is tying and testing the system once it's all installed. The benefits of having them do it, they were the original designers and installers of some of the older program that was in the facility. They've also done a lot of work within the facility, so it's nice to have one company do the whole package versus an engineer do part of it and then the contractor do the rest. So
A little more background. Some years ago, the city entered a consent decree with federal EPA. So there are terms of a consent decree that we have to comply with, having to do with the way the plant runs and the levels of effluent that come out of the plant. In addition, extensive state DES regulation. So most of this work is basically mandated by either a regulation or the consent decree. So, we really have no choice with respect to all the sewage treatment plant upgrades. When the problems developed at the plant, DES came in and did an extensive review and issued letters regarding all the work that needed to be done. And so we think at this point, the city's kind of ahead of, gotten ahead of that or beyond that, but still there's obviously more to do. Anyway, any questions on or thoughts on this one? this motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding primary clarifier upgrades, final design phase with a value of $221,875. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and approve Amendment 1 to the contract with Wright Pierce in the amount of $221,875. Source of funding is Department 169, wastewater, state revolving loan fund, primary tank upgrades.
So this is part of the treatment process. It's 5 settling tanks at our facility. They have a lot of mechanics to it, chains and scraper arms within the tank that are aged. But the design of the tanks are not efficient. There's areas of the tank where the sludge on the bottom doesn't settle properly where it's supposed to settle. Grease is building up where grease shouldn't build up. Plus there's electronics and part of the SCADA system that goes to this project in order to control it. So these are, Wright Pierce looked at this project, did a preliminary design, which we're finalizing to see the needs of this project. This portion of the project would be the final design, which would take us right through the bid process and inspection process of that. I don't know much more to say about the project, but it's
And just, I was thinking of something which I now have slipped my mind, but anyway, is there any discussion or questions about this? Alderwoman Kelly,
Can you talk about the state revolving loan fund?
you want to do that one, or?
I don't know a lot of the details about it, you know, how much it covers. So I
It's a source of funding for
right.
some of these projects. When we do it's a loan. So when we do a larger project, we can either bond the project, meaning borrow the money on the private market, or occasionally get involved with this revolving loan fund at the state level, which carries a fairly low interest rate. And so here is an example where we're using the loan fund. Now, in terms of the state support, the state is supposed to support a lot of these projects, but their portion, their share, they have not funded for. I think they partially funded 1 year, a couple of years ago or something, but they're not coming through with the money they're supposed to. Big surprise. For these sewage pollution abatement projects. So the city's kind of on its own most of the time, other than participating in the loan fund. And of course, the loan fund means the money's got to be paid back, so there's no grant. Representative Rosenwald was very involved in trying to get this funded. I think a couple of years ago, she got a little bit of money. So I think we got something, but not nearly whatever the state share is supposed to be.
What is the state share supposed to be?
I would have to refresh myself on that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
But there was, there's supposed to be not full state funding, but state participation in these projects. But we're not really getting that participation. But I will check out what we should be getting. Also, if anybody wants to tour the plant, it's pretty interesting. Director Photo, Mr. Boucher will take you around. It's pretty interesting, and you see how complicated and large this operation really is.
It's a labyrinth
Yes, it is.
of wonder.
Yes, it's a wonder. Climb the ladder.
Bring good shoes.
All right, any discussion on this one? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding Headworks Upgrade Project, change order number 9, the value of $11,489. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and approve change order number 9 to the contract with T-Buck Construction in the amount of $11,489. Funds are available in Department 169, wastewater, state revolving loan fund, headworks upgrade.
Discussion? Well, you want to explain this one?
This is a project it's at its tail end, but it was to upgrade some of the heating unit in our main building. The Headworks building is the building where all the flow comes in from the city, and it removes the rags and large items from the wastewater so that it doesn't damage the pumps. So there was new mechanisms put in, raker arms, to pull the rags out. And as part of this project, it was discovered that the fire alarm panel wasn't up to code, and some of the fixtures that are in these rooms that have the environment can be hazardous. The fixtures need to be in explosion-proof containers, which comes at a pretty high cost. And that's the bulk of it. It's nearing the end. We're on punch list items now, and I think it'll be close to being done the end of March. But this is one of the punch list items, I guess.
Any discussion? Alderwoman Clee.
I just have a question. So this 11,000, in addition to the 221,000, come out of the state revolving fund?
Correct.
Is this also one of the items that we probably should be getting a little bit more help from the state?
Probably.
Okay,
We'll check that out.
thank you.
There's a woman who works for Public Works who knows this in a lot of detail, and maybe we'll have her come in and explain it. And you'll see, it comes from many different directions.
Yeah.
Sewage treatment, pensions, on and on and on.
Yeah. I know.
All right, so is there any discussion on this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Dan Kukin, Purchasing Manager, regarding digester cleaning project, change order number 2, value not to exceed $100,000. Mr. Mayor, I move to accept, place on file, and approve change order number 2 to the contract with Denali Water Solutions in an amount not to exceed $100,000. Source of funding is Department 169, wastewater.
I'll explain this one. Digester cleaning project, this one started, I think, back in November. There's 2 digesters. There's a 250,000 gallon secondary digester and a 1.3 million gallon primary digester shaped like a big egg. They hold sludge, heat sludge so that it breaks down, so there's less sludge to haul out. Every so often you have to drain these tanks and clean them out and inspect them. They need repairs inside and out. It's taken a little longer than expected. There was some storms that set us back. I don't believe this is going to be the last change order on it, unfortunately, but it's nearing completion. The egg is drained. Right now, we're looking at some of the charges coming in for this company, Denali, to dewater the sludge and drain the tank. Like I said, the tank is drained, but they still have to dewater while we do some repairs on valves. But this is to pay for some of that dewatering and trucking fees that are involved in it also. But I'm still seeing another couple weeks on this project. Whether the 100,000 will cover it, I don't believe it will. But we just found out a little while ago that it probably won't. So that's just a heads up. But that's what this is for. It's to clean out these eggs, and it seems to be on the right track now. So, and repairs being done.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Alderwoman Clee.
So is this part of a typical maintenance? Is this one of the things that were kind of probably weren't done on time, or is that why we're going with all these extra changes?
I won't say not done on time. Some of the valves that are associated with part of this should have been replaced sooner, should have been on a maintenance schedule, an exercise schedule, probably wasn't. But the egg itself, I think it was the last time it was done, I believe, was 2005. So it's probably gone on a little longer, but we looked inside, the interior looks good. These are also the tanks that generate the methane gas, which we also use as a gas to heat some of our facility. And so, yeah, the tanks are in good condition. Could it go 10 years? I don't know, it probably should be done sooner to inspect inside. There's a lot of piping and equipment inside the tanks, auger systems. Mostly the exterior stuff is stuff that could have been checked sooner.
Will this be part of your regular maintenance then?
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
Yeah, all the valves will be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Alderwoman Karen.
So in the letter, it said thought it would be done February 3rd, so it's not complete.
No, it is
So
not
you think
complete.
another month or?
Yes.
Okay.
At least another 2 weeks, and then we start filling the egg again. It takes a month and a half to get the egg full and back online.
Okay.
An egg. It's
It is an egg.
It's a large
an
egg.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to slowly fill it and
Yes,
and,
okay.
get the process back up and running.
Thank you.
Discussion?
Bless you.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now, the next two items are just informational because
Thank you very much.
these were emergencies having to do with the sewer repairs. Under the ordinances, the mayor, that's me in this case, has the authority to authorize emergency sewer repairs and other emergency repairs when they can't wait for a finance meeting. And then the ordinance says we come to you and tell you what happened. So here, the appropriate motion is simply to accept and place on file. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Mayor Jim Donchis regarding emergency PO request, emergency sewer repair at 38 Bridge Street. I move to accept and place on file.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Alderwoman Kelly.
From Mayor Jim Donchis regarding the emergency PO request, emergency contract with Crisp Contracting LLC for an amount not to exceed $55,000 to perform sewer repairs. I move to accept and place on file.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Unfinished business, we have none. New business, we have none. Discussion. Are there any members of the committee who would like to discuss any items or issues? Alderwoman Clee.
I just have one quick question. This was the second sinkhole that we had, correct? I think
I
and
think
we
so.
have two in the city, so this takes care of both of them. This was the
believe-
second one. I think we took care of the last one.
I
The
believe
last
that's
meeting, we took care of the first one, yeah. Thank you.
Any other discussion, questions? If not, record of expenditures. Is there a motion on the record of expenditures?
Mr. Mayor, I move that the Finance Committee has complied with the city charter and ordinances pertaining to the record of expenditures for the period from January 13th, 2018 to February 1st, 2018, and February 2nd, 2018 to February 15th, 2018.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is public comment. I do not believe there's anyone from the public, unless the gentleman with the tie on would like to come up. No? No? All right. No public comment. Alderwoman Kelly. Or, no, wait. Alderman O'Brien.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 8:14.
You know, I would like to visit that.
You should.
Yeah.
I
So,
What do I do?
I would, can you, do you mind just